Hello, and welcome to our BNEWS election coverage of the 2022 Massachusetts state races. Today, we will have a debate between the two Democratic candidates for the Governor's Council, District 3, incumbent Marilyn Petitto Devaney and challenger Mara Dolan. They are vying for the nomination in the September 6th state primary. We will start with 1-minute opening statements from each of the candidates, followed by questions from members of the press. The questions will come from BCAT news director Rich HOSFORD and Burlington Buzz creator Nikki Cadillac. Nikki is not here with us today, so I will be asking her questions. The candidates will then have an opportunity to ask each other one question, followed by a 2-minute closing statements, which can also function as rebuttals to any previously made statements. We will start by, I'll introduce both candidates. Our incumbent, Marilyn Petitto Devaney. On the left is a lifelong resident of Watertown who has always enjoyed helping people. At the time she's first elected, she was the youngest town meeting member in Watertown. When Watertown changed to become a city, she was elected councilor at large and served for over 20 years. She has been on the Governor's Council since 1999. Her challenger, Mara Dolan, is a resident of Concord. She has been a public defender for 15 years, working in Superior District and juvenile courts in Lawrence, Springfield, and Worcester. Now we will have opening statements for 1 minute. We have drawn to see who goes first, and Mara Dolan will start, please.
Thank you so much, and thanks so much to everyone at BCAT for this important opportunity. My name is Mara Dolan. I'm a public defender, and I know that judges matter. That's why I'm running for Governor's Council. In a time when our federal courts are taking away our rights, we've got to make sure that our state courts uphold them. I've said that governor's counselors are the most consequential, least known elected officials in Massachusetts. And that's why my campaign has been about democracy education and making sure that people understand the important work of the Governor's Council. They have the final say in who our judges are, who our parole board members are, and who receives a commutation and pardon. I work in our court system and have for 15 years. I'm there every day, and I understand deeply the issues that we face there. That's why the State Police Association of Massachusetts endorsed me. They know that even though we're sometimes on opposite sides, we are both on the inside. And I'm running because it is essential to the position of the Governor's Council that we have someone who thoroughly understands those issues. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mara. Now, Ms. Devaney, it's your opportunity.
Thank you. I'm Marilyn Petitto Devaney, and I've been very honored to be your governor's counselor for the last 23 years. I am the only full-time counselor. I have met with every nominee, parole board, industrial accident board, appellate tax board, judges, clerk magistrates for 3 or 4 hours for 23 years. We have no staff. Being full-time, I vet every nominee. And I'm not a lawyer. There is legislation that allows, if you are a lawyer and you are an elected governor's counselor, you are allowed to appear before the people that you voted on, the judges. I think it's important to have someone that's committed to this position. I testify in the State House against minimum mandatory sentencing. I go to drug, and the thing is, I'm endorsed by many, but 3 sheriffs because of my commitment to criminal justice. And that's Peter Gattusian and Suffolk Sheriff Tompkins and retired Michael Bellotti, sheriff. But it's important to have someone that's going to be your voice. I'm not a rubber stamp. And And I think it's important to have someone to represent the people. Recently, I
Mara,
reopened
time to
public
wrap it up,
access.
please. Time to wrap it up.
Recently, I opened public access when the counselors had closed public access to the people on a telephone call. We need an open meeting law. That shouldn't happen. I got it through with the support of ACLU, Mass PIRG, Common Cause, League of Women Voters, disability centers, and now you can watch our hearings and know who the governor's appointing. You have a right to know. Thank you.
Thank you both. Now we will have questions from the press. We'll have 90 seconds per answer. We're going to start with Rich. Go ahead.
All right, my first question is, how would both your experience and your personal outlook help inform your decision making on the council?
Now, if we could start with Mr. Devaney, please.
Could you repeat that?
Yes, how would both your experience and personal outlook help inform your decision making on the council?
My personal experience is 23 years. I'm committed to this. I don't have another job. If I was a lawyer, I wouldn't have the time to go out and meet people that I'm going to be voting on. I wouldn't have the time. Recently, we had finally had 2 commutations. I've been asking for years for pardons and commutations, and it comes from the governor. I can't present them. I went out to those prisons and I met with those 2 men in Bridgewater in Norfolk, and it was a travesty of justice. 2 black men, life in prison without parole, and I voted for their release. I went to their life of hearings. I have that time to do because I'm full-time, I'm representing you, and this is outrageous. 30 years ago, these 2 men went to court, and at that trial, there wasn't one person of color. There's racial disparity in the courts, and I keep saying it publicly, and I am proud of my record of having the most women and the most people of color, and just recently voted for the first Korean American woman on the Superior Court. I'm very proud of my record, and I want to keep supporting you, and I hope that you'll keep supporting me so I can represent you. And as I said, I am full-time. You can reach me. I'm at the State House every day. I don't take travel expenses because you don't get paid to drive to work. Thank you.
Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, that's okay.
Okay.
My outlook is deeply informed by my experience. I've spent 15 years representing clients, standing next to them in a court of law as they face a judge, listening to them tell me about their lives, their dreams, their hopes, and I can tell you without exception, they want better lives. They want the support that they need to live the lives all people of good conscience want them to have. As governor's counselor, I will take that firsthand information and I will work with nominees to make sure that they understand the things that I understand. Of course, I will meet individually with all nominees. And as an attorney and all of my experience in standing before judges, I'm in a much better position to understand judges and how they think. I'm not corrupt. And I can tell you from personal experience that you can be before the same judge 20 times, 25 times. And on the 26th time, you understand things about that judge and they understand things about you that help you both work better on the next case. So I'm a big fan and supporter of experience. The experience that I bring to this position is invaluable. Since the United States Supreme Court established the right to court-appointed counsel with Gideon versus Wainwright in 1963, there have been 51 governor's counselors. None of them have been a full-time public defender. I would be the first full-time public defender on the Governor's Council. It's time for change on the Governor's Council, change that only a public
10
defender
seconds.
can bring. Thank you.
Okay, it's my turn to ask a question that we got from Nikki Cadillac. Since Mr. Devaney got to go first on the first question, we will switch it up on Ms. Dolan.
Question to Mara? I'm asking her a question?
No, not yet.
Oh, I'm sorry, misunderstood.
This is, I'm asking a question that
Oh, good. Okay.
from provided to me. And Mara will answer first, and then it'll be your opportunity. We'll alternate.
Okay.
Okay, here's the question. Research has shown that the more diverse a team is, the better the business outcomes. And I would argue the same is true in government. In what ways would your presence on the Governor's Council diversify the council?
I couldn't agree more. We must have diversity, not just among race, but among gender, among age. We need people from all walks of life. If you look at the record of our criminal justice system, folks, we are not as advanced in Massachusetts as you think we are. We incarcerate people of color at 7 to 9 times the rate of whites, and we have the highest Latino incarceration rate in the country. That's on the Governor's Council, and I'll tell you why. The reason we have such an imbalance is because of judges and because of parole board members. Those folks are approved by the Governor's Council. As Governor's Counselor, I will make sure that all nominees are anti-racist, that they're able to recognize racist policy and implement anti-racist policy to correct this terrible imbalance. I'll take the experience I have from 15 years in Superior Court, District Court, and Juvenile Court, working with children, working with people, well, I would say all walks of life, but the fact of the matter is my clients aren't from all walks of life. They're not the elites. They don't have money. They don't have powerful connections. What they have is the rule of law. And I'm proud to tell you that the rule of law in Massachusetts absolutely stands for equal justice under the law. And we've got to make sure that every person, when they leave court or prison, understands that they have been treated fairly with equal justice under the law. And that means that our judges and our parole board members have to be able to recognize injustice and imbalance and unequal treatment when they see it and do what needs to be done in order to correct it.
10 seconds.
The experience I bring as a public defender is essential. We've never had a full-time public defender on the council, and that's what we need in order to make the change essential to move in the right direction.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Devaney, would you like me to read the question again?
Yes.
Research has shown that the more diverse a team is, the better their business outcomes. And I would argue the same is true in government. In what ways would your presence on the Governor's Council diversify the council?
I think I have a record of 23 years of diversity, and I don't choose the judges, but I demand that we have people of diversity and women. I have cast historic votes on Supreme Judicial Court. First majority of women ever on. First African American man, Chief Justice, Justice Island. First African American woman, Chief Justice Judge Budd. First Jewish American man, Chief Justice Judge Gantz. First openly gay, Justice Link. First African American woman, Justice Hines. And the first Asian American woman, Justice Duffley. I have recently voted for 2 women of Indian descent for the Superior and District Court. I wish that we could choose. We do not know who applied and who was rejected. We have 1 person to vote on, and it's the JNC, Judicial Nominating Committee, that presents those. Those are 21 lawyers. They recommend to the governor, and the governor recommends to us. But I'm out there, and I'm in the State House every day fighting and looking for diversity and more women, and I'm proud of my record, and I hope that I have your support to continue.
Thank you. Rich, your turn.
Thank you very much. So my second question is, what is or would be your process of vetting/researching potential pardons and commutations and potential appointments of judges, magistrates, administrators, and members of the various boards that the council oversees? Do you need me to repeat it? Basically, the question is, what's your process of, research and vetting?
Research. Okay. I meet with every single person. If I had a second job, I couldn't do that. And I spend a lot of time vetting, investigating, talking to people who know these people. I am not a rubber stamp. I will vote no. And I just voted no on a recent parole board. This person had never attended a parole board hearing. never he was a state representative currently, and in 8 years he's never sponsored anything related to parole board. That's not what we want. When I first was elected, they were all prosecutors, and I worked hard to change it with the legislators and everything else because it was against the statute for 30 years. And we have people that are forensic specialists and others, but this is not the way to do it. As I said, we only get one person to vote on. There are people that have been thrown off, like Lee Gartenberg, and who is an expert in parole. And I go out to prisons. I talk to people. I go to drug courts. I look into every person to vet them. I have the time. I'm the only full-time counselor. So I talk to a lot of people and call a lot of people before I make my vote. And when I vote no, I may not I don't get joy out of it, but I know it's the right thing. And it's not always popular to do the right thing.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad you raised the issue of commutations and pardons. Unfortunately, there are two important examples of when the incumbent voted no when she shouldn't have. Let's look at our history. In the last 20 years, there have been 475 applications for a commutation. We have allowed a grand total of 3. Last year, neighboring Connecticut issued 1,045 pardons. Massachusetts, 0. This year, we're up to 3, but that's only when you include a victim of the Salem witch trials. We've got to bring the Governor's Council into the 21st century. We've got to do much better on commutations and pardons. Now I'll explain those 2 votes that I strongly disagree with. There was someone who applied for a commutation, Deanne Hamilton. Fortunately, there were enough votes that it was allowed, but the incumbent voted against it. She had a very difficult childhood with a lot of abuse, got involved in drugs. She was charged, arrested, and convicted for a nonviolent drug offense. She sought a commutation, but the incumbent voted against it, saying that her criminal record was too long. That's where my experience comes in. I've worked with this population. I know how to evaluate someone and to tell whether they've turned their life around. Fortunately, as I said, there were enough votes so that Deanne Hamilton did get her commutation, and today she's doing beautifully. Here's an example of a pardon that the incumbent voted against, that I would have voted for. Unfortunately, there were enough members of the Governor's Council so that this man did get a pardon. His name is Thomas Schoolcraft. He committed breakings and enterings, sought a pardon. He did those when he was a teenager. The incumbent said it didn't matter that he was that young. Well, I disagree. The science of brain development in children and youth demonstrates that when someone is a teenager, they simply don't have the capacity to make the same judgment calls. His pardon was allowed. He got a master's in criminal justice from Boston University, and today he's working helping the very kind of kid that he once was. Thank you.
Okay, my second question. We'll go to Ms. Dolan first. In what ways do you think the criminal justice system could be improved?
The simple fact of the matter is that though we often talk about whether the legislature is reflecting the will of the people, whether the governor is reflecting the will of the people, we don't talk often enough about whether our judiciary, our court system, is reflecting the will of the people. It isn't. We're putting too many people behind bars, and they're keeping them behind bars far too long. That's on the Governor's Council, because it's judges who are imposing those sentences, and it's parole board members who aren't letting them out. Look, I'm a realist. I have a lot of experience, and I know that there are some people who pose a danger and people who need rehabilitation. And those people need to be incarcerated until they're either safe to be released or they've been rehabilitated. But the fact is, there are a lot of folks who are ready to come out, and we're still spending $85,000 a year to keep them locked up. And for women, it's twice as much. It doesn't make sense from a sociological standpoint. It doesn't make economic sense. As Governor's Counselor, I'll make sure that all nominees understand this, that they're not overzealous in incarcerating folks, and they're ready, willing, and able to recognize when someone is rehabilitated and ready to come out and become a productive member of society. Those are the values of this district, and as your Governor's Counselor, I'll make sure we uphold them.
Thank you. Your turn. I'll read the question again. In what ways do you think the criminal justice system could be improved?
I think the judges that are presented before the Governor's Council, because as I said, we don't choose them, and we've got some judges that are unqualified, political, they've been coaches for the administration's kids, and that's the biggest problem, that we do have good judges coming through, but there's a lot of political that shouldn't be there. I just want to correct something that my opponent said. I voted against that one, and actually I was voting for her because she was a prostitute, she was addicted, and so she was going for a few months into a home where they learning skills to be able to go out into society, and she did, and she came through, and she's doing wonderfully. So I don't want to be misrepresented at all, because I support, and as I said, we don't put out the commutations and pardons, and I ask for them. We have no control of that. But I think that the difference that we need is we need the Judicial Nominating Commission, because the chair is the one that is not doing his job. There's 21 lawyers that have the awesome responsibility to interview, to reject those nominees, to choose someone and recommend to the governor. And that's the one that comes before us. And there's 21 lawyers that have that awesome responsibility. And this chair and this administration has never had 21 people there. There's 8, there's 10. So these people are voting for someone they haven't seen, they haven't talked to, they don't know, and given a lifetime position. It's the J&C, it's that chair, and that's the process that the governor is doing. So I wish I had
10
more
seconds.
power, but we don't. Thank you.
Okay, now we give the candidates an opportunity to ask their opponent a question. We will start with Ms. Devaney to ask the first question.
Oh, okay. I have so many questions to ask. I have to preface it that this is the most difficult campaign because Mara has been a longtime friend for decades, and I'm still trying to work through it, having a friend running against me. I've had 18 opponents, but this is different. So my question would be, in November, we had a November election, and you ran for 2 different elected positions in 2 different towns, in Concord and Watertown. And you were elected in Watertown for library trustee, and and then you ran a write-in in Concord. But you were still a Watertown resident when you ran in Concord. People are very confused, and it caused problems in Watertown because they had to appoint someone in your place, appointed because you left. But I don't understand. You didn't move until January, and you ran in November, 2 different positions, and 2 people. I don't know anyone that could have done that and had voters in both towns vote for you. That's amazing.
It's false, and I think you understand that I'm not running. I think you understand. I'm not running against you. I'm running against the status quo. And to answer the question, I did not run in 2 different towns. I was living in Watertown, that's correct. I was recruited to run for library trustee, that's correct. There were circumstances beyond my control that made it impossible for me to stay there, and I need to respect the privacy of the people involved. I did move back to Concord, which I'd lived in for almost 25 years. I needed to go home. It was wonderful. And I ran for state committee in March. I was never registered in 2 different towns. That's just completely false.
I didn't say you were registered in both. I said you ran in both.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Yes, my question is this. If I don't win this election, I'll just continue being a public defender, which is something I really love to do. But if I do win this election, I'm going to know that there's someone in the district who has 23 years of institutional knowledge. So what I want to ask you, Marilyn, is, can I call you?
I'm going to tell you something. It was the most hurtful thing. You called me in January and asked me if I was running. And I says, absolutely. And you said, Marilyn, I would never run against you, only have an empty seat. So I'm really working through this. Whoever wins, of course, in any election, of course you help the opponent. I love what I do. And I hope that people will know the trust that they have in me, that I will continue. I would never deny anyone coming to me asking whether it was you or anyone, but I'm hurt. It's hurtful to have a friend run against you. I've had 18 people run against me, but they were strangers. So I'm working through it, and I'm trying to accept it. But of course I would. Thank you.
Thank you. And this is, of course, not about individuals. It's about what's best for the district and being able to implement the change we need on the Governor's Council. And that's why I'm running.
Okay, that brings us to our closing statements. You will have 2 minutes. Let's start with Ms. Dolan, please. Ms. Dolan, please.
Oh, Ms. Dolan. Okay. That would be me. Hi, I'm Mara Dolan. I'm running for Governor's Council because we need change. We need to bring the Governor's Council into the 21st century. We are not releasing people when we should. Our criminal justice system doesn't reflect the will of the people. We are not a society that wants to incarcerate people of color at 7 to 9 times the rate of whites. We don't want to be the state with the highest rate of Latino incarceration in the country. I've been a public defender for 15 years. There are 3 things that I'm going to insist of all nominees. The first is that they be pro-choice. The incumbent just voted the other week, cast a deciding vote to confirm an anti-choice judge to our Superior Court. At a time when our federal courts are taking away our rights, we've got to make sure that our state courts uphold them. Now, she has said that nominee told her privately that she would recuse herself, and that has nothing to do with, abortion has nothing to do with Superior Court. It's not true. I believe in the rule of law. And Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 112, Section 12R makes it very clear that if you're 15 or younger and you can't get the consent of a parent or an adult guardian for an abortion, there is only one remaining remedy, and that's with a Superior Court justice. If you're pro-choice, you believe that we must have pro-choice people in all levels of government, and certainly in a judge who may be presiding over a petition for an abortion from someone 15 or younger. Second, the opiate crisis is not getting better, it's getting worse. We had record opiate overdoses and deaths last year in Massachusetts. The courts are on the front lines of the opiate crisis. People are taken into custody all the time for relapse. It's expensive, it doesn't work, and it can make it harder. We even had a lawsuit filed against our trial courts because there were judges in the drug courts who were prohibiting defendants from taking physician-prescribed medication like Suboxone and Vivitrol. As your governor's counselor, I'll make sure all nominees understand the science of addiction and will work to support recovery. It is personal for me. My sister suffered from an alcohol use disorder and passed away almost 2 years ago. I know what the families go through. I understand addiction, and I know what we need to do and what the courts have the power to do to make it better. We are in a landslide of the informed. If enough voters know, we're going to win. So I'm asking for your vote on September 6th, Mara Dolan, first public defender for Governor's Council. Thank you.
Ms. Devaney, your closing statements.
Thank you. I'd like to correct that statement. 5 councilors, including a former judge and myself, voted for an extremely qualified person for the Superior Court. She has been voted super lawyer, not voted, she has got award super lawyer and top woman in law and so forth. But as we know, it's the Supreme Judicial Court that votes on abortion laws and our legislators. But there is one matter. There's one matter that comes before the Superior Court, and that's minors under 15. So I said to her, look, if someone 13 or 14 comes before you seeking an abortion without parental consent, what would you do? She didn't hesitate strongly. I would recuse myself because it's against my beliefs. Now, this person is honest. I believe it. If my opponent wants me to have her put it in writing, but that's a fact. And so I'm just saying that this is a bogus. It's the only platform she has. If this hadn't come up, she has nothing. And as far as one of our lawyers, counselors, I believe, was a public defender. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter because lawyers can go before the people they vote on. There's no conflict of interest. They can vote on their friends' lawyers that come before us. I do my job, and I want to continue to support you. And I'm asking for your vote so that I can be your voice. I have the time, and I have the passion, and I want to continue to support you. And thank you for your past support. I'm also always grateful. I have the best people in the best district in Massachusetts. Thank you.
Can I do a quick rebuttal?
No.
Nope,
Okay.
that was it.
Okay.
But I would like to thank thank you both for
Thank
your
you.
time today.
Thank you for your
and
time.
BCAT for hosting this.
Thank you.
And I would like to remind everyone that September 6th is the right date, correct?
Correct?
Right.
For everyone to get out and vote in the primary, and November 8 in the general election. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.